Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back.
Yes? I must go. We'll speak later.
Your Grace?
You were right. Witches aren't to be trusted. I conferred upon Geralt a title, awarded him pay, yet he abandoned me and this army.
Honor they recognize not at all. Adhering only to their guild's code. Or a horde of excuses, rather. Kill no beast which shows sentience and poses no threat. Utter flimflam, Your Grace. Though do forgive me the vulgarity. Every bit...
I'm not so certain, personally. Take trolls, for instance. Many manage to live in harmony with humans.
Until provoked. And what then? Villages pulverized. Women and children crushed betwixt fists as uncaring as rocks. No, Your Majesty. Evil is evil. The rule harbors no exceptions.
Farewell, Ake.
You need my help with anything? Anything at all? I've ideas aplenty.
Long you've travelled, Barnabas. The wonders you must have seen. Likely visited many exotic lands before you reached Mahakam.
Corvia, yes. Matina, yes. Nazir, doubly. Zerricania, gods, yes. And Korath, even. I mean, such beauty there, though hot. Oh, dreadfully so. Horrible place to grow turnips, if you've ever a mind to try. Novigrad. Lived there a spell as well, but I didn't much care for it.
Why ever not?
The hierarch, intractable man, banned one of my inventions, condemned it as unholy, vile, etc., etc. Decided he would burn both of us at the stake. As you can imagine, we had a difference of opinion in that regard.
Perhaps I shall regret this, but do tell. What was the thing you created exactly?
Aha! I knew you'd be interested. You've a curious mind, dear Queen. We're two peas of a feather. Quite the clever contraption it was. Made for a widow, wealthy, but aching with longing. In her husband's absence, tormented by unfulfilled needs.
Stop right there. I knew I'd regret asking.
And see, it had this special crank that when rotated...
Barnabas, no, enough.
As you command, Your Majesty. But if you ever get the urge to see it, I've the prototype still tucked away in my trunk.
Noted. But by the gods, please, let's change the subject. Time I attended to other matters.
Ah, yes, you're still here. Off you go, then.
Never thought I'd see the day. The Queen's returned. No, this, Your Grace. My man, we've gathered... No, this, Your Grace. Blackclads of...
Rivia. And here I feared I would see it no more.
I believed you would. I believed you could succeed. Be victorious, Your Grace.
We've not arrived just yet, Reynard. Look. Black flags still flutter over the cities. We've yet much work before us. More battles to fight. More blood to spill.
Meave needed but set one foot into the Ruwode to know something was amiss. The sickening stench of rot hung in the air. Flies swarmed in thick clouds, and crows cawed in a deafening cacophony. What had caused this murder to amass? Well, Meave's scouts soon found out,
Your Majesty,
reported a certain Sergeant Nadamur.
not far from here, past the bend, there's a cutting and it's full of bodies. Our boys and the Blackclads alike. Bodies mutilated, horribly so, guts ripped open, entrails strewn about, heads lopped. Somewhere, well,
Yes?
branches embrace them, grip them tight, as if the trees, they strangled them.
Hearing this, the Queen ordered a halt to their march. They would go no further, she thought, till they knew what had killed those men. Luckily, witnesses were soon found. A haggard band of resin burners emerged from a nearby dugout, black with dirt, covered in dried blood.
Milady,
Their eldest stammered.
Blackins came and started felling the wood. Forced folk to chop away, to make way for a town, they said. They pushed hard, right to the heart of the forest where the old oaks grow, and awoke some foulness. The whole camp, blackclads and loggers alike. Done in one night. No time even to draw their weapons. We was lucky. Found pits to hide in. Just heard something huffed and puffed while talking to the trees, no less.
Reynard ordered medics to tend to the tar-makers, then turned to Meave.
We cannot wash our hands of this, Your Grace. The Nilfgaardians awoke the monster, yes, but it kills Rivians just as readily.
Reynard speaks words of wisdom and honor, Your Grace.
Ake interjected.
'Tis our duty to slay the beast, no matter the cost in our own blood.
Meave stood at the edge of the clearing and pricked her ears. The Ruwode echoed with the cawing of crows, which seemed to perch on its every twig. She also heard the howling of wolves and a hollow rattling, as if branches whipped in the wind, though the day was fair and still.
That Geralt. He just had to desert me.
The Queen removed her cloak to avoid snags and trundled toward the heart of the wood. Her soldiers followed, clutching cocked crossbows to sweaty cheeks.
Thank ye! Them blackclads don't understand the forest. Don't understand nature.
Deep in the wood, it grew cool, with a thin fog filling the air. Meave pushed past a large branch of hazel and froze. Before her stood a tall figure, nearly human in form, save the moss-covered deer skull in place of its head. Empty eye sockets burning with naked flame, the monstrosity hurled itself at Meave with a roar.
Rally to me!
Cried Meave, raising her shield.
Everyone! Anyone! To me!
Attacked from all sides, the monster teetered and swayed, fighting off their blows with ever greater difficulty. Finally, it fell to the ground and fell apart, like an undone bundle of twigs. In disbelief, Meave towed the pile of dried branches and scraps of bark. She saw no blood, no entrails, as if no monster had ever stood there. As if it had all been a dream.
We return to the road.
Meave said, crushing the beast's deer-like skull under her heel.
Ah, and Reynard. I've a request.
Yes, Your Grace?
Once we regain the realm and return to the capital, remind me to issue an edict. No one is to enter these woods. Not to log, nor even to gather brush. Just in case.
Those dwelling near the Ruwode heaved a sigh of relief, and the Lyrians returned to fighting an invader who, after what they'd faced in those woods, no longer seemed so frightening.
Thank ye, Your Majesty. You'll protect us from
A robust rain hither comes.
Meve arrived at the walls of Gradabor, famed for fine rugs and woven tapestries. The city's artisans had been at work, no doubt pressed by the Nilfgaardians, for atop the tallest spire, that of the town hall, flapped a lustrous ebony flag, a sun of golden threads at its center. So vast was the banner, Gascon whistled in admiration.
Gotta admit, the Blackclads certainly have panache.
And a vast and powerful army, I'd remind you.
Reynard interjected.
Arbalists line the walls. That stench in the air, hot tar. And our scouts claim the Blackclads stand armed to the hilt with the best Mahakam has to offer. Victory's not likely to come cheap, I fear.
No cost is too high.
Said Meve, a hardness in her voice.
Reynard, Gascon, ready our men to attack.
The Lyrians needed no more encouragement. Since arriving, they had reveled in anticipation of taking the city, then ripping the banner from its spire. The battle for Gradabor was a hard fight, though not quite as hard as most had thought it might be. During the assault, at its critical juncture, a blow fell from the blue. The unlikely heroes, merchants and burghers brought together by the city's guilds. A wave of them, all riled, swarmed the Blackclads at the gates and opened them wide to let Lyria in.
Onward! Follow me!
As fighting died down around the city, Meve rode for the town hall on a personal quest. Nilfgaard's vast, garish banner rippled overhead. With its halyard cut, it plunged like a great black bird, stricken. It was the last any would see of the golden sun over Gradabor.
3 tiers! Hip, hip,
hooray! The Lyrians were victorious, though not without aid. Meave met with the merchants who had roused the townsfolk, inspired them to rise up and fight.
Many of my soldiers, dozens, perhaps hundreds, owe you their lives today.
Said the Queen.
For that, I am deeply grateful. No, deeply indebted. Should you know a way I might repay the debt, don't for a moment hesitate to ask.
The merchants exchanged glances, nodded, grunted, agreed with each other without uttering a word. Then one, a clothfuller, his moustache most robust, stepped forth, bowed low, and spoke for them all.
Your Majesty, the invaders brought laws. Laws what don't agree with customs we've long held. Non-humans they forced us to accept. Let them join our guilds, sit on the city council. It's right ridiculous it is. These treacherous dwarves, why, they've been on their side from the start, so it's no wonder. But, well, the Nilfgaardian reforms, we'd like you to revoke them. Non-humans must know their place.
An awkward silence ensued. All turned their eyes to the Queen, awaiting her response.
I agree. Non-humans must know their place.
Began the Queen.
So listen closely, all. Whether elf, dwarf, gnome, or human, it matters not. My subjects are equal.
Your Grace, you said it thysen. Were it not for us...
My troops would have died, true. Yet among the dead, there'd have been dwarves of Mahakam, I've no doubt. Dwarves who agreed to fight by my side when none believed I could prevail.
The tradesman huffed, the tradesman puffed. Meave silenced them with a firm swipe of her hand. She left Gradabor that very day, furious at the city's merchants for their bigotry, and irked at an unpleasant truth, that even the vile Nilfgaardians occasionally got something right. Come nightfall, the Lyrians pitched camp. Meave sat down and stared into the fire. Her officers, advisors, kept their distance, unsure if her eyes burned with the fire's reflection or a fury deep inside. Only Gabor dared approach her.
You ken, not long back, I asked myself, Gabor, you bampot, you gone bar me? Left my home, clan, family, and for why? To follow a human queen. But the day you showed me, I made the right choice.
Gabor stood and went back to the mess tent. Had he lingered a bit longer, he'd have seen Meave smile.
Well, our very own queen on the dwarf elder's leash. Why am I not surprised? Dwarves don't... Well...
Yes? I must go. We'll speak later.
Beautifully knocked those racist knobblickers down a peg! Here, here, dear queen! Ha! Beautifully knocked those racist knobblickers!
As the Lyrians passed a cemetery marching along its ivy-covered wall, they heard mourners wailing pitifully to a priestess's moving song. The soldiers dutifully lowered their heads. Their minds sought out fallen comrades and kin, and they wondered whom else the war would yet claim.
Listen,
said Gascon, stirring Meve from her own meditation.
I think I'll veer off for a bit.
What for? To offer your condolences?
In a manner of speaking. But just go on. I'll rejoin you soon.
Meve nodded in agreement, then made as if to ride on. Yet Gascon had hardly entered the cemetery when the Queen turned and followed. Gascon quickly realized he was not alone.
Ah, Meve. Had I been plotting to do you no good, I'd not have announced I was sneaking off to do it.
What do you mean?
Come now, Meve, don't play the fool. You don't trust me, so you followed. Probably thought I'd commune with Epdahi in some crypt. Nay, better, the Conclave of Mages. Well, rest assured then. For if I truly had something I wanted to conceal, I dare say you'd not have noticed me slip off.
If I truly suspected something nefarious, I'd have dispatched my scouts, not followed you alone.
Which begs the question, why'd you follow? Why are you here? Why have you come?
Because you've not been yourself. You've been acting strangely.
And that gives you the right to spy on me?
Gascon, I've grown used to you bending the rules of decorum, but now you overstep, sir. You overstep.
Oh, will you have me flogged?
Hold your tongue, sir, or I shall indeed. Splendid. Now tell me why you've come here.
If you absolutely must know, then follow me.
Gascon led Meve through the ruins of a mausoleum, past its decapitated statues, past ancient gravestones effaced, past sarcophagi smashed to pieces.
Whose is it? Could it be...
Yes, Meve. My family's vault. The Brossards.
The Brossards? Wait. The Brossards?
The very same. Traitors who in 1258 revolted against King Reginald, your late husband. The earth lie lightly upon him. An error, most certainly. We paid dearly for it. Reginald had no mercy, decimated the family. As you can see, didn't even spare the dead. I was outside, away from the house. 'Tis the only reason I survived. Was 8 at the time, stripped of title and home. Well, I'm sure you can guess the rest. Frankly, do my damnedest not to think on it. But the wall, the cemetery, seeing them awoke all the old demons.
Your crest. I seem to recall a pointer. The Duke of Dogs. Now I understand. The Brossard's trial I remember well. Reginald was angry. He prodded and pushed. Too far. The sentence was cruel, spiteful. I felt it all, but said nothing. I'm so very, very sorry, Gascon.
Water under the bridge. And the past's a thing none of us can change.
The past, no. But the present? I could rebuild your family's tomb. All deserve to rest in peace.
Meve, the war nears its end days now, and you'll have more urgent expenses.
So I shall pay for this now. I'm grateful, Gascon, and indebted, vastly. Let me do this. Let me pay my debt in part, at least.
I thank you.
Gascon remained silent the rest of the day. When the force halted for the night, he sat secluded in his tent. But by the morn, he was his witty, mirthful self again. His family's final resting place would be returned to its former glory. This he knew, and it seemed to lift a weight from his mind. He could now reconcile with his family's tragic past.
Good mother, grant him eternal peace.
The Devil's Tower. We draw near, Your Grace.
No sign of Vilem yet, far as I can see.
Unsurprising. Prompt he never was.
The Queen had chosen to meet Vilem at Devil's Tower, and not without purpose. The structure stood on an isle, so no foe could approach without first exposing themselves on a narrow bridge. The isle had little vegetation midst which to conceal a large force. A small unit could evade detection. Altogether, not much to fear.
No escorts were your terms,
Began Gascon, with a hint of mischief.
but better safe than sorry, I always say.
What are you suggesting?
Yours truly and 4 chaps behind the walls. Give a signal, any signal, and we'll leap to your side.
Meve struggled with her conscience. There was no honor in Gascon's plan, but prudence, certainly. In the end, she nodded in agreement, though not without compunction. Vilem arrived soon after, the heavily armored cavalry he had in tow clearly there to boost his courage. He left them at the foot of the bridge and rode across alone. A stiff wind from the river nearly made off with his ermine fur cloak. Vilem and the mother who'd borne him stood face to face. They gazed into each other's eyes, waiting to see who would look away first. When neither did, Meve broke the silence.
Time flies, and I've a kingdom to liberate. No need to drag this out. What's this about? Tell me.
I thought my messenger already did.
Oh, he did. And how? Vilem I wishes to arrange a truce. Only, Vilem I is in no position to parley on an equal footing. Vilem I can, at most, offer his unconditional surrender, because Vilem I's losing this war.
Yes, Mother, I am. And I see that by losing I've at last made you content.
Don't play the victim. What next? Will you say you turned cloak because Mummy showed no warmth, displayed no feelings?
'Twould be unfair, any such judgment. You did show feelings, chiefly enmity, contempt. But that's not why I betrayed you. No, I simply disagreed with your choices, assessments.
I had every right to do what I considered just and good.
And I had every right to voice my view, which you ever ignored. Yet this is neither the time nor the place to discuss that. Let us parley as strangers. I'm losing, you say. And you're right. But I haven't lost yet, and have no intention to surrender. I am ready, however, to renounce my fealty to the Empire and pledge my forces to you. As long as you fulfill my conditions.
Let me hear them.
First, you will not rescind the reforms I've authorized already, any of them. Second, you will guarantee both my safety and that of my advisors. Third, I shall remain your heir, and next in line for the throne.
Impudent child. Insolent beyond all measure.
Well, I had to try. Goodbye, Mother. And may you...
Hold. I didn't say I reject them.
It's come my turn to listen.
You're impertinent, Vilem. As you should be. Any future king must be certain of himself and his judgments. Rely on none but himself.
Thank you. I never suspected...
I'm not done. Time now you heard my conditions. You shall remove crown and royal cloak. You shall labour from dawn till dusk. And you shall fight at the fore in every battle. Is that clear?
Yes. Yes, Your Majesty.
It's settled then. Now the road beckons.
Vilem bowed, turned, and walked away. Meve followed, still angry, though she could not stifle a smile. Soon thereafter, Meve's army set out towards Rivia Castle. It would not be long now before the decisive battle.
How do you fare, my son? My advisors, have you met them?
I certainly tried, but they've no wish to speak with me. Begin to mumble when I draw near. Even the ridiculously reverent Count Reynard.
Well, suspicion must still grip their minds. And for good reason, you must admit.
Yes. I've got a lot of work ahead of me, that's plain to see.
And you shall get to it straight away. As soon as we've spoken. Your reforms. Tell me about them. You insist that I not repeal them. They must be a source of pride.
Mother, why must you mock me? If you wish, I shall tell you of my decrees, gladly so. Yet not to hear you scoff them and ridicule me.
You're right, Vilem. I'm sorry. That was unfair. I'm willing to hear you out.
I began by clarifying key aspects of the rights of spoil and staple.
Meve listened intently and with rising interest. With her son's every word, her skepticism waned, giving way to swelling pride.
And thence my decision to revoke Sparless trade privileges. You stand quiet, Mother. Awfully so.
There are few things I enjoy less than admitting I was wrong. We'll go over it all again, Vilem, in detail, when peace comes, at a meeting of the Council of Peers. General at Dahi, You must tell me more about him. I think it wise to know one's foes.
Actually, Mother, he reminds me of you, in many ways.
Truly? You're serious?
Mm-hmm. He's proud, confident, and positively loathes compromise.
I'll take that as a compliment. But do we differ in any way? I mean, besides the beard.
Contempt. He behaves as though he sees in us a different, lower race, the way some elves do. All the North he treats as a wilderness to be tamed, to be broken.
I saw this in Edirn. I know what you speak of. But I won't allow him to do anything of the sort.
Mother, I know Nilfgaard has not defeated you in battle. I know you've gone from one victory to the next. But I beg you, don't underestimate him. He's prepared to do anything, literally, to win.
I wanted to thank you.
But whatever for?
For your courage in believing we could reconcile. For extending a hand and helping all this fall into place. I wouldn't have done so. Ever. I would have fought it to the bitter end.
Mother, I understand.
If we hadn't, well, what might have happened? I don't even want to think about it.
Then don't, please. Let's just leave this all behind us. It's the past.
We shall speak later, my son.
Your Grace,
said Reynard, saluting and clicking his heels.
Peasants from the Scala region have arrived at camp. Supplicants, wishing to deliver a plea to your person.
Meve sighed. Supplicants, trials, audiences. All aspects of queendom she did not miss.
Very well. Bring them here.
She replied.
And instruct them to be brief, with no digressions.
The band of commoners was led by a sturdily built beekeeper dubbed Ethelred, son of Theobald. Finding himself in the Queen's presence, he fell to his knees and waved his arms in his best impression of proper etiquette.
Oh, my lady the Queen, your gracious mightiness, take pity on us tillers and toilers. Wars all around, leaving us but scraps to live off, and barely that, to be honest. So we beg you, don't do it. Don't raise the levies. We can't pay more than...
What?
Meve interrupted.
What the devils are you talking about?
What? Your decree? One they nailed to our notice board.
The peasant said, sheepishly pulling out a parchment and pointing to the relevant paragraph with his rough finger.
We, Queen Meve, do hereby proclaim that if our throne we shall recover, the tallage, murage, and pavage we shall raise threefold. The expenses of this war, for to compensate at the cost of the common folk.
Meve and Reynard exchanged astonished glances. They had issued no such decree. Yet the document bore her signature and seal.
Vilem, did you have a hand in this?
No, Mother.
The prince said, shaking his head.
We were at odds, true. But never would I have forged your name.
Then who fabricated this decree?
The Nilfgaardians.
The Queen replied without hesitation.
They have access to my seal, to my scribes. They wish to spread fear, uncertainty, and doubt, turn my folk against me. And they are liars without any honour.
The Queen tore the falsified document to shreds. Knowing this would solve nothing, she had to find the printers churning out these fakeries and end their run.
Oi, Meavy!
cried Gascon, as usual paying no heed to courtly etiquette.
Come here a minute.
Would it hurt so terribly to occasionally address me by Your Grace or Your Majesty?
Didn't want to be petty, but since you bring it up, you've never once addressed me as the Duke of Dogs.
Meave sighed, rolling her eyes.
Get on with it.
My lads jumped one of the Blackclads' transports. Guess what they were hauling?
Gascon handed Meave a pot filled to the brim with a thick, dark fluid.
Paint?
Close. Printer's ink. Same tone used in those phony decrees.
Meave spun on her heel, put a hand to her mouth, and yelled,
Reynard! Send scouts to comb the area!
Her soldiers returned a few hours later with good news. They were able to find a Nilfgaardian printer's workshop hidden in an abandoned barn. It was guarded by a division of elite infantry.
Right, so?
Gascon thumbed the edge of his blade.
Shall we stop the presses?
Time for the Nilfgaardians to publish a retraction.
Spoke the Queen as she drew her sword.
Signed with their own blood. Follow me!
The Lyrians did not need to be told twice. Their Queen's honor, her good name, that was a cause well worth fighting for. The Nilfgaardians fought fiercely, led by a seasoned covert agent. Seeing he would soon fall into enemy hands, he put a knife to his throat and, in a quick slash, sent blood pouring over paper and still wet ink. Reynard leapt towards him, trying to stanch the red tide. But it was too late, and the spy's secrets perished with his last gargled breath. Meave picked up a freshly printed pamphlet. The document listed her many crimes and misdeeds, the true and the manufactured alike. Above the main body of the text, an etching depicted her, well, in a very unflattering manner.
How about a taste of their own medicine?
Asked Gascon, piecing blocks of type into a scathingly foul phrase.
Me and the lads will scratch out a couplet about Epdahi, spread it around the countryside, give the folk a hearty laugh at those tossers' expense.
Yes, these presses should be put to good use.
The Queen said.
But printing lewd jests is not it. We must spread facts. Tell what the Nilfgaardians did in Eldersburg, how they tried to murder me in Mahakam and Angren, what fate lies in store for those they conquer.
Gascon grew serious and set the ink-stained type back down.
Get to work. Before the sun sets, I wish to hold the first document in my hands.
Soon, in every town, village and tavern, there hung a notice detailing Nilfgaard's crimes. The outraged Rivians did what they could to strengthen the Queen's army. Some by offering coin, others by joining her ranks.
Nilfgaard left none alive in Rosberg, not even one woman, and no child was spared!
Rivia will never die so long as we are alive.
These lands, they look familiar to you?
Naturally, Your Grace. They're the venerable Count Caldwell's.
War, death, chaos. Everywhere but here. This land's positively pastoral.
the traitorous Caldwell family's residence loomed into view. Against the horizon, it looked suitably sinister. Yet the manor had changed since Meve last saw it. 2 new wings, ornate towers, a grand colonnade. And the windows now glistened with stained glass, the gilded hue of imperial suns.
We must pay them a visit,
Seethed the Queen. The great double doors opened with an echoing thud. Just inside them stood the heir to the estate, Dragomir, his wife and 3 children by his side, and Helena, the treacherous Count's widow. Sliding the cap from his head, thus giving proof of the family's hereditary baldness, Dragomir knelt down upon one knee.
Your Grace, my father's betrayal stands beyond doubt and exoneration.
The young Caldwell said flawlessly, and in a single breath, as if he'd practiced a dozen times.
And his death at your hands was most well deserved. I beseech you to lay your trust in Prince Vilem. He'll confirm I knew naught of my father's plans. I humbly ask that you not punish me for his sins. Allow me to stay on my ancestral lands, to serve faithfully as your loyal subject.
I believe not a word slithering out of his mouth,
whispered Reynard.
The first chance he gets to stab you in the back, he will take.
Meve narrowed her eyes and gazed at Dragomir. Large drops of sweat dripped from his brow.
You may stay,
said the Queen, finally breaking the silence.
On 2 conditions. Firstly, you will make a considerable donation toward the war effort. Then field an infantry regiment, fully outfitted, under my command.
Naturally, Your Grace. And the other?
In one swift motion, Meve snatched a crossbow from a soldier, put it to her cheek, and loosed. Caldwell the Younger screamed bloody murder as he threw up his arms to shield his face. The bolt hissed by and struck the center of a golden sun, shattering one of the stained glass windows.
Redecorate,
said the Queen flatly. She then mounted up and sped off, earnestly hoping she'd not come to regret her generosity.
I shall replace the glazing in the windows to bear Rivian diamonds. A glazier. I shan't let you down. Again, many thanks. I shall replace the glazing in the windows to bear Rivian diamonds.
Meve now reached Willow Haines, a settlement she knew well, for it lay near Waldenrad, where in peacetime she would go to escape her queenly duties and enjoy the thrill of a hunt.
Pheasant, grouse, and partridge in abundance. You will see,
said Meve in muted excitement, pivoting in her saddle to face Gascon. Alas, it appeared the war had ravaged even these woods. Where life had stirred and grown tall before, only resinous trunks remained. And the village itself had lost its quaint allure, surrounded now by a double stockade, a golden sun fluttering above it.
Bastards couldn't even let the damn trees be.
Gascon seethed. A dismal scene. Her once cherished wood, and it weighed heavily on the Queen's spirits. Waldenrad had been a place removed, where she could rest and forget the weight of her crown. Reynard's voice roused Meve from her sad reverie.
A Nilfgaardian garrison holds the village,
he said.
We ought to drive them out. Avoid any surprise later from the rear.
Give the order to attack, but none is to play the hero. We shall breach or topple the stockade together. Senseless to perish so close to home.
Reynard nodded. Moments later, the Lyrians rushed forth and attacked. When the battle dust had settled, Meve instructed her soldiers to gather Willow Haines' inhabitants. Upon spotting their armed liberators, the common folk cowered in terror.
No longer need you fear.
The Queen shouted.
No longer must you worry about homes and loved ones. The war's nearly done.
Of a sudden, a villager dropped to his knees and raised his hands to the heavens in supplication.
Tracker! Guide my queen!
Meve broke off oddly, baffled by the man's outburst. And then it dawned on her. The Rivians of Willow Haines had been driven away. Taking their place, Nilfgaardian settlers brought in to transform the near-subsistence plots of local peasants into great estates producing for the Empire. Reynard managed to grasp the essence of the Nilfgaardian peasants' frantic pleas.
They wish to stay. They've come to love the land. They pledged to renounce their emperor, swear allegiance to you as their rightful ruler.
Meve had stopped listening. She turned to survey the hamlet. The walls of the huts freshly whitewashed, tools neatly arranged, flower beds well tended. A young girl of 6 or 7 summers peered out from her hiding place in a sunflower patch.
Your Majesty?
Asked Reynard, having noted that Meve's mind had wandered.
What are your orders? What shall we do?
They can stay on 2 conditions. Tell them. For 15 years, they'll pay double the tax. And if any of the previous inhabitants return, they're to be given their huts, lands, and any crops produced in their absence without delay.
The Nilfgaardian settlers accepted the terms with relief. Meve's soldiers with markedly less enthusiasm. As the force left Willow Haines, the troops made a show of knocking aside any food or drink the peasants offered.
Hail Rayna, Maeve!
Nilfgaard, lady!
Let me tell you of Ravencroft, a quarry Meve passed by. A quarry with a dark history. For years earlier, its wall had collapsed, burying dozens alive. Scholars summoned from Oxenfurt were unanimous in their findings. The rock was fragile, further digging would likely cause slides. Meve had heeded the scholar's advice and closed the quarry by royal decree. Yet now, as she neared it, Meve could hear the even tap of pickaxes. She dispatched scouts to investigate. They returned promptly, their faces sullen, their cloaks blanched with a fine limestone dust.
Quarry's open anew, Your Grace. Nilfgaardians. They've got folk in the pit working it. Appear to be from the surrounding villages.
Interesting. Their engineers have found a way to render it safe. Secure the walls.
I'd say that's right unlikely, Majesty. Judging by the fresh graves we saw.
My son, I trust now you see the superior culture Nilfgaard has brought.
Said Meve, turning towards Vilem. In answer, the prince merely dropped his head. The queen then turned to Reynard, as ever at her side.
Reynard, what do you advise?
As a soldier, my queen, I'd advise against any kind of assault. The terrain's hard, unsuitable for a fight, and we've little to gain from a victory. As a man, however...
Yes?
To leave our folk in chains, in that death trap. It wouldn't be right.
If I were to calculate in heart and mind, keep note of gains and losses...
Began Meve.
I'd bend the knee to the Imperials, just as Vilem did. But bloody arithmetic won't dictate my course. For I do what's just. I do what's right. Follow me!
Her troops followed without hesitation, swords in hand, their hearts afire. The Lyrians handily dispatched the Nilfgaardian overseers, more trained in the ways of the whip than the sword. Those who survived now found themselves shackled in the very chains they'd forced the peasants to wear. Peasants. Oh, unfortunate souls. The cruel labor in the quarry had taken its toll. They stood before the queen, shrunken to skin and bone, clothed in tattered rags, their eyes reddened by dust. But in those eyes burned a brilliant fire.
Your Grace, them black-clads treated us like dogs, stripped us of dignity. So we beg you, give us arms. Let us march neath your banner. 'Tis a chance at revenge we seek, we want.
Reynard leaned towards Meve and spoke in a scarcely audible whisper.
Majesty, they've knout. Not boots, not even foot wraps. To equip the lot, train them, would cost a small fortune.
'Tis true. They've nought to their names.
Said the queen.
Have few skills to offer and little strength. But to look in their eyes is to know they'll never flee. Never throw down their arms. Such recruits are worth coin in any amount.
Emaciated, downtrodden, the peasants met the queen's offer with gratitude. They relished the thought of facing their tormentors in a fight. Meve spied the outline of Malabon Castle on the horizon, and turned dour. True, no golden suns waved atop its towers, yet that did not mean those within supported her. Malabon belonged to House Obert, long in conflict with Meve's own, and with Meve herself.
Behind their ramparts. Do you see them, Reynard?
Asked Meve, shaking her head.
Countless ballistae, collecting dust, while war rages all around.
Perhaps
the Oberts will lend us aid.
Reynard replied.
True, you've been at odds with them in the past. But perhaps now, faced with a common foe.
A common foe?
Snorted the Queen.
You mean Nilfgaard, to whom they opened their gates? Caldwell, whom they supported?
They supported me, Mother.
Vilem said.
And I know they share my disappointment with General Epdahi's actions. When they see I now stand by your side, they might forget old wrongs.
The things I do for the good of my realm.
Meve sighed.
So be it. Reynard, send a runner to the castle. Tell the Oberts their queen seeks a word.
Moments later, the castle's heavy iron gate creaked open. Meve rode into the cobblestone courtyard, where Margravine Greta, head of the house, greeted her. Although, greeted is perhaps not the right word, for Lady Greta granted her only a barely perceptible nod.
What can I help you with, Meve?
The war, my dear. The one being fought outside the walls of your castle.
Greta smiled to herself, then intertwined her brittle, ring-covered fingers.
I'm afraid that's impossible.
It is a vassal's sacred duty to serve her liege, and...
And my liege is King Vilem.
Greta calmly retorted. Hearing his name, Vilem stepped forward.
I wish to add my name to my mother's entreaty,
said the prince.
We tried to pact with the Empire. We trusted General Epdahi's promises, and he broke them, one after the other.
Margravine Greta dropped her gaze. The Oberts had lost lands, their serfs had been deported. Under Nilfgaard's rule, they had lost no less than the other great families.
We can brook no further delay. We must strike, united with all our might. Only thus can we retain hope for a victory.
Mine is long lost,
the noblewoman replied in a whisper.
I watched from my tower as their troops marched past. An endless sea of black plate. But you are right, Your Majesty. At some point, one must say enough. Even if that is one's last word.
Vilem grasped the Margravine's brittle hand and bowed.
Thank you. On behalf of myself, my mother, and all our land.
Meve left Malabon Castle reinforced by the Oberts and reassured by Vilem's actions. If earlier she had harbored doubts about forgiving her son his betrayal, now she was convinced she had done the right thing.
We march with you, Lyrian beside Rivian, together at the Blackclads. War. War, what is it good for? Absolutely not. War. Prince Vilem speaks true. War. War, what is it good for? Absolutely not.
Meve's force reached Cavaldon, a small, run-down town.
The Blackclads, they've a strong garrison in place,
proclaimed her scouts upon returning from a foray.
And they stand prepared for a siege. Their stores overflow, and we see ballistas, scorpions.
Cavaldon can be taken,
began Reynard hesitantly.
But not without losses. Considerable losses.
A retreat? Is that what you advise?
I fear the soldiers wouldn't take to such a course. They're eager, Your Grace. They've a fire in them. Order a retreat and you could devastate morale.
Our losses may be heavy,
said Meve, drawing her sword.
But I'll make certain the vile invader suffers even more. Order the troops to prepare. We will attack.
Soon after, the Lyrians moved on Cavaldon, war drums rumbling in step to their march. Upon the walls, the Nilfgaardians stood poised to defend. The Nilfgaardians had indeed prepared well, with grapples to repel hook ladders from the walls and long spears to rain down upon attackers far below. Meve managed on the fourth attempt to breach the defenses, but did so scrambling over the corpses of her own men. The Queen was in the field tent when Reynard arrived with surprising news. To be heard over the groans of the wounded, he had to raise his voice.
Your Grace,
A delegation of townsfolk. They seek an audience urgently.
Dozens of burghers stood before the tent. Between them and the Queen, a man knelt in shackles. His face was blooded as if he'd endured a vicious beating just moments before.
Who's this?
Our blacksmith, Todor.
Snarled a priestess in a frayed robe.
He betrayed you, Your Grace. Soon after the Nilfgaardians arrived, within hours in truth, he offered his labour and strength. They didn't even need to ask. Forged arms and armour for them, all for imperial gold.
Meve gripped the beaten man's beard, tugged upwards, and looked him in the eyes.
Did you forge the hooks and the tips for those spears?
I did, Your Grace.
It was fine work.
Growled the Queen.
Damned fine.
Show him mercy, milady!
Cried a withered old man in a flour-spattered apron.
When the black-clad bastards captured my son, they were eager to hang him. Todor spoke for him, saved his life.
He helped me too!
Hollered a woman in the crowd.
I were hungry. He shared what little he had.
The townsfolk began shouting over one another. Some told of the blacksmith's noble deeds. Others labelled him a traitor, deserving of a cruel and violent end. Meve turned back towards the field hospital, pondering the case, then spotted her soldiers' corpses laid out in rows. Had it not been for Todor, there might not have been so many.
Mother!
Vilem's voice pierced the air, replete with tension.
My offences were far graver, yet you showed me compassion.
This man forged arms for the Nilfgaardians. 'Tis true.
Said Meve to the crowd.
Yet you, Baker, baked the bread they ate. And you, Potter, stained the cups from which they drank. Willingly or not, each of you aided the invader. Where does pursuing one's craft end and treason begin? I've no answer to that. So I shan't punish any for doing merely what's theirs to do.
Upon hearing the verdict, the Queen's troops stared in disbelief, then began to boil. As she walked back calmly to the tent, they jeered and hissed. At the last, it took Reynard to calm them down. Meve had saved Todor, but she was convinced she'd not see the blacksmith again. Come evening, he returned to the camp, with a wagon full of arms so new they shone.
If it weren't for you, Your Grace, they'd have torn me to bits with their bare hands,
he said, kneeling before her.
I thank you for speaking up for me. For my innocence, that is. I've a gift for you. A gift I knows you'll put to proper use.
Meve took a spear in hand, put it to her shoulder, and gazed down the shaft. The tip glowed red in the light of the setting sun.
Of that, my friend, you can be sure.
Freedom will cost us dearly. Dearly indeed.
Your Majesty, the hut's untouched. Ripe grain in the fields, 'tis hard to believe. I feared we'd have another Eddern here, with the blackclads setting fire to all.
I feared nothing of the sort. Nilfgaard's not stupid. Lands it aims to hold, it doesn't destroy. And Vilem did bend the knee to the Emperor.
Meave personally, and none too gently, shackled the Nilfgaardian commander, a young nobleman with a precisely trimmed moustache. Like many noble Imperials, he spoke fluent common.
The wagons. What's in them, Captain?
Scrap, Your Majesty.
The Imperial promptly replied. Noting the Queen's confusion, he elaborated.
To be melted down and recast into arrowheads and spear tips. Our engineers originally planned to use the foundries in Broadhead, yet these proved too primitive. We were ordered to remove the scrap, take it elsewhere.
Any pride from the victory vanished in an instant, and Meave swelled with anger, but also with shame. The shame came from realizing that to the invader her realm was naught more than a weak, underdeveloped backwater. Meave slammed the chest she'd opened shut.
Blast it! Back to Broadhead. Let's ride.
Crumbling walls, shattered windows, rotted wood. Broadhead was bleak, a dull shadow of its former self. As the Lyrians entered, the somber townsfolk glared at the arrivals and uttered not a word. That is, until they saw Vilem and began to hiss and growl. Meave resolved to address the crowd.
Folk of Broadhead, you're free at last. The Nilfgaardian occupation is done.
Aye, and a new one starts now.
Are you madman? Don't you recognize our banners? The Lyrian army stands before you.
Oh, I recognise banners. Served neath them as a sergeant 15 long years. And then I came back to my hometown. Know what I found? Hardship and squalor, your grace. All had gone to shite. On account of damn dwarves. Been flooding Rivia with their metal goods for years now. Us smiths don't so much as light their pipes in their foundries no more. You call yourselves the Lyrian army. Colours and banners confirm it. Well, what about your arms? Weren't forged in us fires, but in Mahakams, by us worst foes. Hell, I even see some at knobheads in your ranks. And right behind, Prince Vilem, who bent a knee to blackclads not long past. So what freedom's it you're giving us, your grace? Freedom to beg in common, not in Nilfgaard's mongrel tongue.
Beg? What do you want about, man?
There's no levy on goods from Mahakam. But without it, us workshops don't stand a chance. And ye, your grace, you wear their armour, bear their arms, and bring bearded bastards to our doorstep.
The dwarves are faithful allies. They help us because...
'Cause they've got something to gain. Simple as that.
Enough. Silence. Consider yourself lucky you've a merciful queen. I'd have had your head off by now. Move it!
Before Meave could leave the market square, Barnabas politely interjected.
Frankly speaking, there's a bit of truth to what the man says.
I'm perfectly aware of that. But what do you want?
I don't mean to toot my own horn, but perhaps I might be of some help.
Do tell how. I'm all ears.
Everything your folk make here, the dwarves of Mahakam make twice as fast and twice as well. You must find a so-called niche, an innovation. And it just so happens innovations
are your speciality.
At the risk of being immodest, exactly. Besides, it might serve the cause of peace to show the folk here, non-humans, are not all bad, that they can help, not just steal human jobs and piss in their milk.
I'll consider it, Barnabas. I shall think and let you know.
The time came to leave Broadhead, so Meave summoned her advisors, eager to hear their counsel. They put forth ideas, many of merit, but the Queen would decide the city's future. Meave knew she couldn't abandon the folk of Broadhead, leave them embittered, unsure of how to go on.
The time's come to bring hammer down on anvil again. Take this gold and show the North the value of Broadhead steel.
Even with the Queen's support, the craftsmen could not compete. The dwarves of Mahakam, The goods from their foundries stifled the city's workshops in but a few months. Meve had gambled much, but gained naught in return.
Our last workshop's gone to shite, Your Majesty. How are we to live? To earn? To eat? Well, how?
The wind howls like a ghastly apparition.
When Meve saw Reynard's usually stoic visage rent by a half-moon grin, she knew he brought particularly good news.
Your Grace, our toil has borne fruit. The liberated towns of Rivia have hired an outfit of mercenaries conveyed to your command, along with wishes for a speedy victory.
Meve cast an eye over the long column of hired soldiers, taking in their top-notch arms and battle-hardened faces. Her gaze lingered longer on their banners, surprised to see some bearing the Caldwell crest, suggesting Dragomir had proven worthy of the trust she had extended him.
With support like this to bolster our ranks, our way grows easier,
said the Queen with a smile.
Send the townsmen a letter. Say their queen thanks them for their devotion to the realm, and when the time comes, she shall reward them fittingly.
Rivia Castle. Seems our journey nears its end.
That end could yet prove tragic. We've daunting tasks ahead. Pride. It's all I ever felt pondering those walls. Yet now, to behold them from below, I truly do wish we hadn't built them so tall.
The castle of Rivia now loomed before the Lyrians. Water surrounded it on three sides, and dual defensive walls studded with podgy turrets completed its perimeter. It was famously difficult to take, and had changed hands only once, a few months before, when traitors opened its gates to the Nilfgaardians. Foreign banners waved upon the walls. The Golden Sun and General Epdahi's crest on Rivia's walls, the walls of home. There was somber silence among the troops, the glee and pride of many triumphs suddenly gone. For each knew if the Queen ordered an assault, most would lie dead by sunrise. Your Majesty, began Reynard in a reassuring tone.
We needn't strike quickly. We've time on our side. To prepare would be wise. 2 months, I wager. Perfectly enough. We stop supplies from getting through. They'll capitulate, I've little doubt. Or at worst, be too weak to defend the fortress.
Reynard's reasoning was sound. There was no need for urgency. Meve had the upper hand for the first time in this war.
These invaders have grown fond of Rivia Castle,
said Meve.
So let them stay and rot. Reynard, erect road barricades and guard posts between city and citadel. Gascon, seize all boats, barges, anything that floats. Stop anything from entering from the lake. Move!
Soon, Rivia Castle stood isolated from the world outside its walls. All roads leading to it were blocked, impassable. Fishing boats, a cordon, embraced the fortress on Loch Escalot. The lanterns on their bows glowed like fireflies in summer. Then, an emissary from the castle brought a message for the Queen. General Dahi wished to meet, face to face, and half the way between the citadel and the Lyrian camp.
Well, well, some general,
smirked Gascon.
We've barely snapped the trap shut, yet he's already shaking in his knickers.
Be on your guard, Mother,
said Vilem.
Dahi I know better than anyone here. The man always has a trick up his sleeve.
We've a few of our own. Sleeves and tricks. But I thank you for the warning and concern.
Meve proceeded to the meeting point without delay. A lone rider soon appeared on the horizon. He came adorned in rich black robes, their golden trim shimmering in stray sunbeams. She'd seen him before, in Edirn, through the megascope.
You came as I requested. Good. Very good.
I couldn't possibly refuse such a courteous invitation, especially as compared to your previous missive. The art of diplomacy, you've improved your grasp.
Your realm fell quickly. I expended little strength in seizing it. This left me much time to study. But please, we must set aside this bitterness. I'd like to formally welcome you to Rivia, dear Queen.
I see you've readily adopted the role of gracious host in my home.
In point of fact, I've grown fond of the castle. Fortifications impressive, atypical of the north. Not so your brave soldiers, whom we shall pick off like ducks. I pity them, in fact.
Dry your eyes, General. Rest easy. I've no plans for a quick assault. I shall first wait to hear the rumbling in your bellies.
Remarkable. You truly believe you can win this war? I've not been in the north long, but have discovered something all the same. You don't grasp complex ideas. You know Nilfgaard is large, but your minds don't fathom its enormity. You see, for every army you defeat, another will come to take its place. One larger and better equipped than the one before. Even now, as we so pleasantly chat, Army Group East is en route to lift your siege. Due to arrive tomorrow. And do you know what will happen when they do? They will crush you against your own castle's walls, like the maddening flea you are.
Plough yourself, Nilfgaardian scum.
Charming. Is that all you wish to say?
I prefer action to words. You'll see for yourself tomorrow.
Unlikely. In fact, I doubt you'll reach the walls at all.
Pray that I don't. For if I find you midst the fray, I shall strangle you with my bare hands.
Without awaiting a response from General Dahi, Meve pivoted and turned toward camp. Her pace was quick, despite a heavy heart.
Seems your late husband, rest his soul, may have overcompensated a bit with this castle. Don't have a spare key for the main gate by any chance? No, thought not. Shame I've not yet finished my glider. Could have flown over the walls. Seems Seems you're late.
The good book states the just always prevail, with no cause for despair. The black-clads shall shed their shields and flee for the first cock crows. Nilfgaard fights by the sword, thus it shall fall by the sword. Nilfgaard fights by the sword, thus it shall fall by the sword. The black-clads shall Nilfgaard fights by the sword, thus it...
As a rule, human fortifications aren't worth a pound of shieldmarshite. But this fort sure turned out alright for you. Blowing hell! Got no chance against these walls. Tricks to stay positive, ain't it, Your Majesty? As a rule, human fort...
And I thought Rosberg had strong walls. No turning back now. Victory or death. I'll fight by your side, my lady. To the very last. No turning back now. Victory or death.
Gonna be one hell of a night! Ah! 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 Don't yous dare sound the retreat, got it? My axe craves blood! Nilfgaardian blood! My axe craves blood! Nilfgaardian blood!
Let us hope this proves the war to end all wars. Many will die today. Too many. Always darkest before the dawn. Let us hope this proves the war to end all wars.
Maeve's closest advisors already awaited her in the command tent. In a few brief words, the Queen gave a report of the meeting, only with great effort masking the quavering in her voice.
An army, an immense one, approaches from the west. If we meet in open battle, we stand not a chance.
Damn it! Why did no one warn me?
Our scouts were discovered. Captured. It must be that.
Yes, it didn't seem right. Our way so clear, so untroubled.
We must flee? Not at all heroic, I admit, but sure as hell better than being trampled into the dirt.
Easily said, but for a problem. Our force is chiefly infantry. The army that draws near includes cavalry, several regiments. We cannot hope to escape them. We cannot hope to hide.
What do you advise?
We've two options. Capitulate,
Out of the question.
or take the castle. Tonight.
Suppose for a moment it's possible. Tell me how and at what cost. Are we to scale a mountain of comrades' corpses to reach the top of the wall? I know we're at war and many die. But to command our troops to take that citadel is to condemn them to certain death.
Rivia's walls are unassailable, I fully agree. But there's more than one way to take any fort, and this fort too.
I think I like where this is going.
I know this citadel like no one else. I know its one potential weakness. The boat landing.
Wait. That narrowest of piers between the two turrets? The one where the fishermen would land?
The same. As I'm sure you recall, Your Grace, at that narrow pier's end stands a narrow door leading straight into the fortress. A small detachment could approach unnoticed, overwhelm any sentries, and get inside.
What then?
They would need to pass through the fort to the winch in the guardhouse, open the gate for the rest of the force.
That is... suicide!
Perhaps, but as options go, we have it alone.
And I'm to choose to send folk there? Most certainly to die.
You needn't choose anyone, for I volunteer, and will take only those willing to do the very same.
Bloody wretched plan.
And you've a better one, do you?
Of course. I'll go instead.
Beg your pardon? I don't.
Face it, Reynard, you couldn't sneak past a corpse. Sound like a bloody tambourine in that armour. Apart from which, you're Maeve's right hand. So you ought to be by her side when the fighting starts.
Firstly, Reynard, I'm grateful. Well done, my friend.
Thank you, Your Grace.
But truth be told, I did indeed hear you walking to the tent from the other side of camp. And yes, you know Rivia Castle better than anyone else, but the assault must transpire silently. Gascon will lead the force.
Understood, Your Grace.
Cheers, Meave. I'll try not to disappoint.
You won't, I'm sure. Godspeed you on your way, and please, try your damnedest not to die.
Gascon hand-picked his men, those most adept with daggers, not swords. Noiselessly, they glided through the dark toward the castle, the light of its lanterns blurred by the evening mist. Meave watched anxiously as the boats glided away, her heart pounding in her ears. All depended on this mission. The fate of her realms, perhaps all the North, the lives of her troops, and her own. Now there was naught she could do but wait.
Good luck,
she whispered, gazing at the fortress walls, cloaked by the dark that seemed to surround all now. The Lyrians prepared for battle, their silence absolute, in darkness, illuminated only by the pale light of the moon. Meave was restless. She paced nervously in a circular pattern, awaiting the signal they'd agreed upon.
Blast, it's taking long.
Finally, a torch's faint glow appeared atop the towering walls. It disappeared, then glowed again, and one more time around. Meave leapt in the air, and as she did so, barely stifled a cry of utter joy.
They made it! It worked! Vilem! It's time! Sound the horns! Attack!
Moments later, Lyrians in the hundreds burst from the trees. The Nilfgaardian defenders loaded their catapults and ballistae. They did so slowly, convinced the castle walls remained impenetrable. Then they heard chains, grinding and clinking, and the sound sent shivers down their spines. Bewildered, they watched the main gate rise as the attacking force rushed forth. General Epdahi dispatched an elite unit to take back the winch at once. Yet he saw this was in vain and all was lost when Meave rode into the castle courtyard. Meave had begun the day known as a great warrior. Yet by night's end, legend was the cloak she wore. Her shield stopped powerful blow after blow, as her blade found gaps in her foe's black armor. At first, Nilfgaardians scoured the fray in search of the Queen, hoping to prove great heroes. Soon, she was their chief scourge, and they began to flee before her blade that sung their death.
Retreat! Retreat!
What was this extraordinary vigor that surged through Meave? Naturally, she wished to liberate her castle and realm, drive off the invaders, defeat the arrogant General Epdahi. But in that moment, above all else, she longed to fight her way through to the guardhouse and bring Gascon's party relief.
Follow me! Move! Move!
As she stepped through the door into the tower, the silence told Meave she'd arrived too late. Gascon's men lay slaughtered in pools of their own blood. The man himself slumped over the winch's crank. 3 arrows in his chest rose and fell with his each ragged breath. Meave tore off her cloak and pressed it against him, desperate to stem the bleeding.
Help's on the way. Don't you even think of dying.
You know...
wheezed Gascon, a slight smirk on his lips.
I always enjoyed doing things just to spite you.
Medics on the stairs in the guardhouse, steps away, heard a long, blood-curdling wail. They entered the room to find the Queen kneeling, pounding the wall with her fists, her eyes flooded with tears. Gascon lay motionless beside her, covered by her cloak. The Queen rose, her fists clenched, her shoulders rigid, her knuckles white. Her face betrayed no sorrow, no despair, just rage, hot as a forge, immeasurable.
Now's not the time to mourn.
Seethed Meve, struggling to stay calm.
Now's the time for war, for slaughter, revenge. With victory today, we'll recover our home, return to our kin and set our blades aside at last. Yet until victory is ours, they must drink. Drink greedily of Nilfgaardian blood!
The Lyrians were at the brink, near their breaking point. They'd followed Meve for thousands of miles, over snow-clad peaks, through forbidding swamps. They'd fought, survived countless battles at her side. And though their gazes were now weary, she knew they'd follow her into fire.
Your Grace, the Blackclads. They've holed themselves up in the upper keep. We went to breach the wall, alas to no avail.
Meve nodded, twirled her sword, then leapt upon a mount. Her eyes spoke pure determination.
So we'll bloody well try again.
Nilfgaard had the upper hand, yet the black-clad spirits had suffered. They now made more use of shields than of swords. When Meve finally broke through their line, they raised their arms in surrender. Rivia Castle had fallen. It was hers once more.
Trocker! Neng to Wien!
Meve showed her prisoners of war mercy, knowing full well they'd only followed orders. Death would be the fate of only Ardal ep Dahi, the one Nilfgaardian who'd issued those commands. Alas, the general had disappeared. A prisoner revealed ep Dahi had fled as soon as the Lyrians had surged towards the upper keep. He had glided down to the lower castle in a wicker basket for transporting food. Curled up beneath potato skins and other scraps, he'd scurried away not unlike a common maggot. Meve cursed her luck and leaned back against a merlin. Dawn was yet a few hours off, but the horizon had already begun to glow blood red. The Nilfgaardian reserves now drew near, too late to prevent the castle's fall.
I'll get him,
muttered the queen, more to herself than anyone else.
I swear on all that's sacred I'll catch the bastard. But now we've a pressing matter to see to. Preparing the defense.
That night the war turned, with the battle for Rivia Castle as its fulcrum. Meve's great victory, not only retaking the stronghold in a single evening, but also fending off a further invading army, proved the Nilfgaardian Colossus had feet of clay. The armies of the north had united and now seemed to be on the attack everywhere. Imperial forces, while still far more numerous, lay stretched over thousands of miles. Their position was untenable, and Nilfgaard's commanders knew this. In a decisive battle, they yet stood a chance, so they gave said battle, and suffered a resounding defeat. Just a few months on from that memorable night in Rivia, the Imperial army was in utter disarray. Eldersburg, the fortress, remained a last point of resistance. General ep Dahi and what had survived of Army Group East had dug in there. This place, where Nilfgaard had triumphed grandly in the war's early days, would now bear witness to its impending defeat. It seems history, after all, has a sense of justice, or humor, or both. Though Meve had already reclaimed her realm, she refused to retire her sword just yet. For King Demavend had requested her aid in purging Edirn of the invader. How could she refuse? She owed the king a favor, firstly. Yet she also had a burning desire to settle the score with ep Dahi.
Demavend's envoy and I spoke, Your Majesty. The king has Eldersburg surrounded. He awaits and won't begin the assault till you arrive.
Good. I truly hate to miss it. Tell the troops to prepare. Gear and ire.
Of course, Your Grace.
Yes? Is there something else?
Pardon my boldness, Your Grace, but I can't help but be concerned. You don't sleep. You've the air of illness about you.
I think back to that night in Rivia often, to Gascon's death. Perhaps I made a mistake. Perhaps he didn't have to die.
He didn't, Your Majesty. He needn't have been there at all. I'm a soldier. I swore to serve you. Gascon, not so. He might have left at any time. Guilt, pity trouble you, Your Grace, I know. But he signed on willingly and knew exactly what for. Gascon gave his life for he thought you worthy of it. There's no greater proof of friendship, no greater gift one can give. Accept it, Your Grace, and remember him with gratitude, not sorrow.
You're right. I thank you, Reynard. That I needed to hear. We've talked enough. We must march on to Eldersburg.
Your Grace, if I may. Some of our comrades in arms would like a word with you. The war nears its end. Paths are likely to diverge.
I see. Thank you. I shall stop by the mess tent later.
Oh, look, 'tis Meve, slayer of the Blacklads! Long live the Queen!
Huh? What is it now?
The war nears its end.
Sadly,
Sadly, why?
I survived. Again. Rebuild your land, Queen. Enjoy your life. Me and my men, we'll be moving on.
Arnulf, in Lyria and Rivia, your past matters not. Nor does your shame. Stay.
What about after? What do I tell my ancestors when the time comes? I yearn to sit at their table, lass, and drink mead in their company, so go I must.
So long, Arnulf.
I'm pleased to see you again, Mom. You need something?
The war's near its end. The future, what does it hold for you, Isbel? Wise counsel will always find a place at my court.
A tempting offer, Mom. So be it. I shall stay. But I've one condition. You're never to force me to wear shoes.
Ha! These terms I can agree to. Duty calls. I must go.
Of course. Should you need me, I'll be here.
Yes, Your Grace?
The war nears its end. What next for Reynard Odo?
Whatever you command, Your Grace. Is something amiss, my lady?
To be perfectly blunt, I've no wish to give you orders anymore.
Your Grace? Would you wish me to leave? Remove me from the court?
No, Reynard. I'd wish you to stay. But I'd no longer wish to be your queen alone. Do you catch my meaning?
I do, Meve. I do.
It's time I attended to other matters.
Your Grace?
The war nears its end. What next for you, Sir Ake? Will you
Boundless is my gratitude for the offer, Your Grace. But alas, I cannot accept.
You'll return to your path then? Set off to hunt monsters?
Forsooth, though not at once. First, a more daunting challenge awaits. I must go home. I was certain Siegfried and I would never reconcile. That he would forgive me never. But to behold you and Vilem find common ground again, it rekindled dead sparks of hope that I, too, could span the rift. When I joined your force, I believed I would serve as an example to you and your troops. I see now I was mistaken. For 'twas you who taught me a lesson. I dare say, the most valuable of my life.
I thank you. And good luck, Sir Ake. I shall think often of you and your son. Farewell, Ake.
Always good to see the Queen. How can I help you?
Our conversation in Mahakam. Do you recall it? When you resolved to join my force, leave your homeland?
Of course. Clear as day, that. You saved me and my clan. I'm in your debt. Will be for some time.
Well, we've won the war. And you had a hand in the victory. Heavily so. As I see it, you've more than repaid your debt.
Feeling a wee bit choked up, as King Desmond said when an assassin's bolt ran clear through his esophagus. Come here and give us a squeeze.
Later, perhaps. But Gabor, any plans for what comes next?
Ha! I wasn't expecting to have this chat, so I'm a bit caught with my knickers down past my knees.
War's over, but we've much left to do. Our relations with non-humans, for instance. I mean to improve them. And I think you could help, Gabor, greatly so.
Meaning, you'd like me to stay in your court? I'd see it as an honour, your majesty. An honour true.
We shall return to this conversation later.
No skin off my back. We seeing each other, your grace.
You need my help with anything? Anything at all? I've ideas aplenty.
We've come a long way, Barnabas. You've plans for the future?
We may have won the war, but I've oodles still on my plate. So many riddles unanswered, so many inventions unrevealed.
Perhaps you could join my court. Continue your work there.
We get along splendidly, Your Grace, I know, but that's simply not the life for me. In situ, one sees nothing new, as they say. Besides, I have some unsavoury memories from my time at the court of King Niedemir. Come to think of it, I do wonder if they ever managed to put out that fire.
I understand, Barnabas. Yet if ever you change your mind, you know where to find me.
Thank you, Your Majesty, for everything.
Time I attended to other matters.
Ah, yes, you're still here.
Yes?
War's nearly over. What will you do? Where will you go?
The war against Nilfgaard, perhaps. But others drag on, and will continue to do so.
What do you mean? What war will persist?
Scoia'tael survivors still hide in the forests.
Yes, but I've heard they retreat to the east. Simply let them go. Let them leave our lands. Why ever not?
To see them return even stronger? No. We must slit their throats, one and all. Now. Crush them like worms beneath our boots.
Rayla, at some point one must admit there's been pain enough. One must put away the bloodlust.
I shall do so in my grave, and not a moment sooner.
I must go. We'll speak later.
The Lyrian army had grown into a great serpent. So much so that riding at the column's tail, Niamh could not see its head. Footmen, cavalry, and archers stretched like a glistening snake between two horizons. Niamh had come a long way indeed, and she felt proud, as did Vilem, riding at her side. At first, the troops had eyed the prince suspiciously, if not with hatred. But they'd watched him fight for weeks now, and saw him as one of their own. Suddenly, Niamh heard angry cries and the clash of steel against steel, all at the column's front.
Close ranks! To the left! March left! Support the flank!
Niamh drew her sword, spurred her horse, and galloped forward along the line of troops. Then, through the swirling battle dust, she spotted shimmering golden suns. Normally disciplined, determined to an extreme, these Nilfgaardians quickly broke rank and ran.
Deserters! Leaderless, Your Grace.
A scout reported.
Headed south, they was, towards the frontier.
Chained prisoners now sat along the dusty road. Meave stopped in front of one. He was ragged and unshaven. Flies had taken an interest in his poorly bandaged hand. Spotting the Queen, he lowered his head and quivered with terror.
I know you take us for savages,
Began Meave, her gaze passing over several scraggy black-clads.
but fear not. We shan't flay you alive nor eat you for dinner. And when a truce is signed, you'll be sent home, where I most sincerely hope you'll stay this time.
As the Queen mounted her horse, she barely concealed a grimace. Her thighs were sore and chafed, her hands raw from the reins. But she bit her lip and rode on, for the prize was now very near.
Was in Eldersburg when it fell. Broke my heart, that did. Was in Eldersburg when it fell. Broke my heart, that did. But not complete. I will take it back.
The good mother's guided you to...
Meave was listening to a scout's report when screams suddenly burst from the prisoner transport. In a moment, Meave bore witness to a truly macabre sight. The Nilfgaardian captives to whom she had recently been merciful lay dead, massacred in cold blood among the camp's tents.
Blast it all.
Seethed the Queen, looking at the bloodied corpses. Those responsible for the deed, peasants from the quarry at Ravencroft, Meave had welcomed into her ranks. The harm they'd endured from Nilfgaardians wielding whips, this was what had festered in their hearts and minds. The Rivians couldn't accept that their oppressors had gone unpunished. So they took matters into their own hands, in defiance of the Queen.
There's fiends, not folk!
Cried the peasants, now armed and in uniform.
They was owed this, plain and simple.
It had been justice by a mob, and Meave knew it should not go unpunished. Yet at the last, ignoring her advisor's counsel, she left the former slaves' fate for their commanders to decide. For the Queen had grown weary of choosing between two evils, each one darker than the other.
Long live Meave! Long live the Queen! Long live a liberator!
Meave noticed one of her scouts, a certain Corporal Larkin, halt his mount and train his gaze on the woods.
Your Grace, I thought I heard something, could have sworn. A whisper, maybe, but... nothing now. It's all gone quiet. I think I might have imagined it, in fact.
Imagined?
Meave placed her hand on his shoulder.
No one has sharper senses than you. If you claim to have heard something, it's worth a closer look.
Corporal Larkin saluted, then rode past the trees. Suddenly in shadow, he keenly scanned his surroundings. Something caught his attention. He dismounted, then brushed aside ferns, exposing tracks made in the mud.
Your Majesty!
He shouted, quickly turning towards the road.
Sound the alarm! It's Scout!
An arrow whisked through the air, pierced his throat, and suddenly silenced him. Then the forest came alive with cries in the Elder tongue. Elves on the attack. The Scoia'tael fighters stood no chance against Meave. When the sounds of battle finally ceased, The queen, victorious, tossed aside her arrow-studded shield. She then ordered the commando's leader brought before her. She'd expected a ranter who would turn up his nose, spit in her face, and cry, "Death to all Dwan!" But the bloodied elf before her was no arrogant firebrand. He averted his gaze, and his lips gently trembled.
Youthful you look, elf. How many summers to you? 30? More?
27, my lady.
27. A wonderful age. A shame to die so young.
I beg you, Renna. For mercy, I ask. If not for me, then at the least for...
Mercy? You jest. You wait in ambush, come at us like bandits, and now you dare ask for mercy.
It was no ambush.
Don't play me for a fool. I know what I saw, and am no stranger to warcraft.
It's not you we wished to fight. Sverre.
Then who killed Corporal Larkin, Werebubs?
When we saw you on the high road, we fell back and hid in the wood. We wanted you to pass. Your scout's hearing, very keen. He heard something, then spotted our tracks. You must understand. We had no choice.
You know you might have surrendered.
Like Dristan's commando. Is that what you mean? They laid down their arms before an Edirnian general, who ordered them hanged. One and all. If we're to die, we prefer to die bows and swords in hand.
Why are you here? Were you to rescue Epdahi?
Rescue someone? No, Renna. We flee. The Nilfgaardians have realized they'll lose the war and have renounced us. Without their support, we stand no chance. Demavend has loosed his hounds. They hunt our units one by one. He's offered 50 gold pieces for the head of each Scoia'tael. It's the same in Temeria and Kedwen, if not worse. We wish to join with your Veth's unit, flee together as far as we could. It was our last hope.
Why do you tell me all this?
Because you listen still. You've not ordered me killed, so... you've clearly a heart. Eseth Aina Edu.
Elves often speak beautiful words. But it's for their deeds you must judge them, Your Grace. The Moulderwood, remember what you saw.
I beg you. So few of us remain. All tired, all wounded. We pose no threat. Let us leave your realm. Let us flee.
Enough senseless killing for one day. So be it. You're free to leave.
I don't know how to thank you.
Make certain I don't ever regret this decision. 'Twould be thanks enough.
Your Majesty, they attacked us, came at us unprovoked.
Truly, Rayla. Unprovoked. Because it seems to me, we've provoked them for years.
I thank you for your compassion towards me and all my folk.
Meve personally unfastened the prisoner's chains as her Lyrians looked on in silence. They did not approve, this was clear. Their displeasure was palpable.
Yes?
I must go. We'll speak later.
You treat yourself to
to fight at your side, Majesty.
The Lyrian corps neared Eldersburg, and it could not have been on a more idyllic day. The sun shone, birds sang, trees rustled in a light breeze. But Meve saw it as she had at the war's start. Walls illumined by a fire's glow, the cries of fleeing civilians, the stench of burning flesh. As on that day, Eldersburg was under siege. At this time, Eden's flags fluttered in the field, while Nilfgaard's tattered sons crowned the fort's towers. The Queen found Demoven's tent without difficulty. Made of sheets of silk edged with silver thread, it positively shone.
Seems the realm's restored to a virtuous path,
muttered Meve.
Aha! There she is! Queen Meve, savior of the North, the Sun Slayer.
Mockery I don't appreciate.
I wouldn't dare. Not my words, those. You've been painted thus in song. Master Dandelion himself wrote a ballad, The Battle for the Bridge. If you take the bard at his word, you're as fierce with a blade as any witcher.
Is that jealousy I hear?
To be perfectly honest, Meve, it is. For I hadn't the pluck nor resolve. And when all the North tucked tail, went to shite, you alone stepped up and bared your fangs. Let it be a lesson for the future to us all.
You called out the future. Tell me, how's your son?
Baldwin. Growing like a weed he is. And the spitting image of his old man.
Good news all, especially given the mother's profession.
She's now Countess Demeretta of Gullet, a lady of the court.
Your lawful wife must be thrilled.
Hard to say in truth. I've not seen her in some time. Duty keeps me away, you understand.
You work hard, I'm certain. Many a night, too.
You might say so indeed. But enough about me. As we're chirping away like two gossips in the field, do tell me, what of Vilem?
He's here with me.
In chains, perhaps?
No. In coronet and robes. We came to an understanding. What's past is past. A lesson for the future? What do you mean?
My dear, this war won't change a bloody thing, you know. Nilfgaard will be Nilfgaard, the North, the North. We'll sign a truce, the Blackclads will turn tail towards home, but the old borders don't satisfy a soul.
I'm perfectly satisfied with them, thank you. And I just wish other folk would respect them too.
You're one hell of a warrior, but you're no strategist at all. Your perspective, you've got to broaden it. Nilfgaard, we cannot allow it to regain strength and spirit, else we'll face another invasion within a decade or two. Measures are required. Preventive, preemptive, whatever the learned call it. Build an army, a vast one. Wait in ambush. And when they least expect it, break their bloody spine. Just think, if we were to join forces.
Enough. I don't wish to hear it. Won't even entertain the thought. I'll help you take Eldersburg, but then I'll go home, where, God's willing, I'll live to a ripe old age.
As you wish. We can mount the assault at any time, but... My scouts report a small Nilfgaardian force approaching from the south. They've stayed off the roads, moved only under the cover of night, escorting someone.
Who?
I've no notion. Could be a mage. Devilishly unpredictable, that lot. Could wreak havoc in our ranks. Either way, before we rush at the walls, we must make certain they don't reach Eldersburg at all.
I shall see to it.
Are you sure? You've just arrived. Must be weary after the long journey.
An understatement if I ever heard one. But I wish all this to be over, quickly.
Meve set out after the Nilfgaardians immediately, a cavalry escort in tow. Her unmatched scouts, who had led the army through the mountains of Mahakam and Angren swamps, quickly found the enemy's trail.
This way, Your Grace. It's not far now.
That very same day, Meve's force caught up to the mysterious black-clad unit. Lyrian riders surrounded the foe, forcing the Nilfgaardians to halt. All fell so quiet, the creaking of taut Lyrian bowstrings could be discerned.
The common tongue. Which of you knows it?
I do, Your Majesty.
You also know who you deal with, I see. What is your name?
Kaldvin, Your Majesty.
At last. A Nilfgaardian name I can pronounce. So, Kaldwin, it seems this war will reach its end in 2 days' time at the most. 'Twould be silly to die today, wouldn't you agree?
It would, milady.
Precisely. I've spilled enough blood. I've lost the appetite for more. So, provided you don't give me a good reason to kill you, you'll walk away with your lives. Now tell me, you carry something for General Epdahi. What is it?
A letter.
Urgent to the point of insanity, it must be. Who wrote it? The dear Madam Epdahi?
No, Your Majesty. The Emperor.
My. A letter from Emir himself. You must be an important person. A noble, or... Yet your uniform is simple, with no discernible distinctions. Who are you truly, Kaldwin? A spy?
A simple messenger, Your Majesty.
Don't lie. I know messengers, how they travel. Alone, armorless, atop a swift steed. You're escorted by cavalry of the heavy sort.
For I often carry orders the recipients don't wish to perform, thus the escort.
Give me the letter.
I've sworn to deliver it to General Epdahi, or to die in the quest to do so.
Oh, very well. My translator shall read this letter, then return it to you. You shall break no vow, and who knows? You might even survive.
And if I refuse?
Guess.
So be it. I accept your offer.
Meave's translator cracked the seal and read. And as he read, his eyes grew wide as saucers. Then he whispered in the Queen's ear.
Truly, and you're certain you're not mistaken. The wonders of this world. Kaldwin, consider this your lucky day. I allow you to complete your mission, with one proviso.
And that is?
That when you hand him the letter, you will give the General my regards.
As Kaldwin and escort set off towards Eldersburg, the Lyrian soldiers looked at their queen with disbelief. To leave a Nilfgaardian to fulfill a secretive task. Meave failed to stifle a rather mean laugh. They'll understand tomorrow, she thought. General Epdahi had prefaced Lyria's and Rivia's invasion with a series of arrogant demands. The Nilfgaardian had been impudent, as he had felt sure he'd achieve a quick and decisive victory. Yet several months on, he too received an ultimatum. One signed by Emperor Emir var Emreis himself. The missive was concise and left no room for interpretation. With General Epdahi dead, the Nilfgaardian army descended into chaos. The kings of the north, united, took advantage and struck at the foe. Their victory was complete. The Nordling forces cheered their commanders and monarchs, but for none so vehemently as the one queen among them. Many dream of achieving the impossible. Meave had done it. Through wit, determination, and boldness, she had thwarted the Nilfgaardian invasion. The queen would rule for many more years. Stern, yet ever just.
Ah! So a lass saved the North from the Blackclads?
That is one way to put it.
Well, I'll be damned. And a chap, she find herself one in the end?
Leave it be. Bloke's been spinning the tale all night. Story's done. Time we got some shut-eye.
Yes. Particularly as we've yet a long road before us.
Phew. Throat must be parched as old leather after all that. Except, I'm itching to know what happened to the lot of them. Reynard, Gascon.
Ah, very well. Whom shall we start with? Vilem, he worked hard to regain his mother's trust and respect, took on many daring missions regardless of the risks. The lad who Nilfgaard had wielded as a tool now sowed terror along its borders, and appeared a successor most worthy of Meve. Gascon was buried with honors of the most refined yet mournful sort. His peer lords themselves bore the casket. Soldiers in parade dress beat the funeral drums, and a new stone figure appeared beside the Brossard family vault, the very pointer from their crest, a ducal crown upon its head. Though Nilfgaard owed its defeat chiefly to Meve, in the Empire her name was uttered with utmost respect. Returning soldiers spoke in awed tones of her courage and generosity, referring to her as Gvedin, the tenacious one. Once the Scoia'tael had withdrawn from the northern realms, non-rebel elves and dwarves emerged from the woods. Though they returned to their homes in human communities, they lived in fear of their neighbors, aware that the next massacre would eventually come. And Meve? As I said, she ruled with an iron hand, not fist. Reynard ever at her side, tempering, supportive. No longer a general and trusted advisor, he had to the Queen become something more. Much, much more. And now, if you'd allow me...
Course. Leave him be, lads. Let him get some rest. Till the time comes for the next tale.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this was Thronebreaker, The Witcher Tales. I really hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did, so if there is something that I missed, please let me know down below in the comments. Also, let me know which ending do you like the most, and which game would you like to see next. And as always, if you liked this video, give it a like, dislike if you think it sucked, and I'll see you in some other game, hopefully in a next Witcher Tale.